I'm Tracy Sable. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, chaos at the border. Title 42 has ended and migrants are flooding into the country. We have the latest. Fight for the unborn. Why one lawmaker continues his efforts despite opposition from his own party. The future of society. What Pope Francis says about the declining birth rate in Italy. And on display, a closer look at the Vatican Museums' new exhibition dedicated to a figure from ancient Egypt. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us. Our top story tonight, Title 42 ended at midnight last night, but tens of thousands still remain along the U.S.-Mexico border. A migrant child has died in U.S. custody. The Border Patrol Union calls it the worst sustained disaster agents have ever witnessed. Meanwhile, the Homeland Security Secretary says the border is closed.
Do not believe the lies of smugglers. People who do not use available legal pathways to enter the U.S. now face tougher consequences, including a minimum 5-year ban on re-entry and potential criminal prosecution.
Last night, just hours before Title 42 was set to expire, a federal judge in Florida blocked a Biden administration plan to release migrants in the U.S. on parole. Republicans say the border is open as agents have apprehended more than 10,000 migrants a day for the last 3 days.
They come across, if they have a criminal background or they're terrorists, they throw their ID away on the other side, and they come and they get processed within 3 days, and with your tax dollars, they're sent around the country.
Now, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops is urging Congress to come up with real immigration reform. They add these migrants should be treated with dignity, love, and respect. And joining us now is Rodney Scott, former chief of the United States Border Patrol and senior fellow at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Rodney, thank you so much for coming on. It has been less than 24 hours since Title 42 has been lifted, and there's been a lot of concern of a huge rush of migrants at the border. But today, a top official with Homeland Security said that there was no major influx. I know that you're in El Paso, Texas right now. What have you seen?
Yeah, the reason there's no major influx, and they can say that honestly, is because there's just a mass migration every single day. Border Patrol for the last several days has been averaging around 10,000 encounters a day. The countless gotaways, because hundreds and hundreds of miles of border are completely unopened, and they're actually kind of metering who they take into the stations. I think if viewers need to understand, the only time the U.S. Border Patrol or even Customs and Border Protection actually counts an individual as an encounter is when they take them into custody. So if you look up along the border right now in San Diego, I was just talking to somebody this morning, there's thousands of people sitting on the ground in the United States between the fences that have not literally been encountered yet because they have not been taken into custody. And I've seen the same thing here in El Paso. It's a place called Gate 42, hundreds of aliens lined up, and they're just like waiting until the next bus comes to pick them up to take them in. It's total chaos. But I think everybody really needs to understand, this is really misplaced compassion. I agree, you have to have compassion for human beings, but this draw, which is all created by catch and release, is encouraging people from around the world to put their lives at risk for a lie. 9 out of 10 will never meet the asylum criteria. They're not going to make it into the United States, but unfortunately, the catch and release that this administration has created allows them to think they're free in the United States with that MTA, and it just sends a horrible message. And then again, it's a national security risk because when those Border Patrol agents are tied down with the migrants, the criminals, anybody that doesn't want to meet a law enforcement officer is sneaking around them, to include the cartels and all their narcotics.
Yeah, U.S. Customs and Border Protection in Texas, I mean, they're pretty fired up down there about what they're seeing at the border in the Lone Star State, tweeting in part, "Our border is on fire," and they throw more gas on that fire with everything they do. That's in reference to the Biden administration. Pretty strong words there. Rodney, do you agree with that?
I really do agree with that. There's a lot of attention on Title 42 today, and I would argue it's a little bit of a distraction in and of itself. The only reason we're talking about Title 42 is because on January 21st, 2021, President Biden signed several executive orders that completely destroyed border security that had been built up over three decades, not just during the Trump administration. When he took away the Remain in Mexico programs, when he tore down the asylum agreements we had with other countries that we were working on with even more, and when he stopped the border wall infrastructure that included a ton of technology that they don't want to talk about that also got shut off, not only did that demoralize the Border Patrol, that literally tore down a bunch of the tools that they had. And then this administration basically sent messages globally that said, you're invited to the United States, as they systematically created groups of people that they chose to not be subject to Title 42 or Title 8. Title 8 has been there forever. They could be using those tools that they keep talking about today. The expedited removal has been there forever. The 5-year ban has been there forever. It's smoke and mirrors. This is really intentional. They campaigned on an open border. They knew what they were doing. Mayorkas has got a lot of experience in DHS, and I'm not going to get into the why because I don't want to try to get into their heads. But this is intentional, and the reason they're not stopping it is because they don't want to stop it.
You know, we have about a minute or so left, but I want to touch on this. I mean, we're focusing on the southern border, but we also have a northern border as well. Talk to us about that and the concerns up there.
Well, thank you for bringing that up, Tracy. Everybody, and I even did it right now, everybody gets distracted and they talk about the immigration, but anything that crosses our border, the economic engine of this country now is trade, global trade and travel. All of that is dismantled when you have a mass migration like this, and it is the northern border, and it's also the both coasts. So resources have been pulled away from the northern border, they've been pulled away from the coastal borders, and they've been pulled away from enforcement missions. And really, almost all Border Patrol is doing now, and even a lot of the Customs and Border Protection officers, is providing food, services, and processing people, because each one of these individuals takes about an hour to process. So just start looking at those numbers that you're seeing and do the math. There aren't agents out in the field. The threats on the northern border have increased. We've given the cartels on the southwest border complete and total control over who and what comes into our country. And this is going to continue to slow down the economic recovery that we were doing, because we're not going to be able to facilitate trade and travel like we should, because even those officers have been redirected to this mass migration, which is, again, it's false compassion. They're trying to flee economics or places they don't like, but it does not meet the definition of political asylum, and their asylum claims will be denied, but they'll already be loose in the United States by then.
Rodney, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. We really appreciate your insights.
Thank you, Tracy. Have a great afternoon.
You as well. God bless. Republican Tommy Tuberville says that he will continue to fight for the unborn. The Alabama senator is not confirming the Department of Defense's nominations until the Pentagon changes its expanded abortion policies. But now he is getting opposition from the top Republican in his own party. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales has the latest.
Since February, Senator Tommy Tuberville has held up DOD nominations, nearly 200 civilian, general officers, and high-level promotions within the Pentagon. The issue is over the Defense Department allowing service members and their spouses to use taxpayer dollars to fund abortion-related travel expenses.
In America, those with the broadest shoulders guard those with the narrowest. Yet the Biden administration wants to mobilize our military against the weakest and the most defenseless, the unborn.
The DOD created the new policy in response to the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe last year. Senator Tuberville and other Republicans say current law only allows the Defense Department to fund abortions in cases of rape, incest, or if the life of the mother is threatened. However, the Department of Justice, quote, concluded that the DOD may lawfully expend funds for this purpose under its express statutory authorities and independently under the necessary expense doctrine. But this week, Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell says he won't support Senator Tuberville's blockade.
No, I don't support putting a hold on military nominations.
But other Republicans tell me the blame shouldn't fall on Senator Tuberville, but on the Democratic leader for not allowing the issue to get a floor vote.
Holding the promotions is a difficult decision, but it's the only thing I think will get their attention. All he wants is a vote on his amendment to change this policy. He deserves a vote, so I blame Senator Schumer. Give him a vote, all this goes away.
Approximately 40% of the women in the military do not have or have limited access to abortion services where they live or are stationed currently, according to a RAND study. Senator Tuberville is receiving praise from conservative organizations like the Heritage Foundation and Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has signed a measure to protect the moral and religious beliefs of medical personnel.
It ensures freedom of speech for physicians. It ensures that physicians can follow the data, not dictates.
The Republicans signed 4 measures to protect medical personnel. Among the provisions, they cannot be disciplined for objecting to perform a procedure, including abortions and sex changes. The law also forbids any action against a practitioner for speaking or writing about a health care service or policy. Well, we have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including fighting for the unborn. We look at abortion measures in 2 U.S. states, and a cardinal defends the change of leadership in a Vatican charity. Lawmakers in Oregon are fighting back against a pro-abortion measure. The state senators are boycotting votes on several bills, including ones on abortion and so-called transgender health care. There cannot be a vote on the proposals without at least a few Republicans present. Negotiations are expected to resume on Monday. Well, a huge crowd of pro-lifers recently gathered in Maine's state capitol to speak out against a measure that would give the state one of the least restrictive abortion laws in the U.S. Lawmakers are debating a measure that pro-lifers say would make it legal to perform an abortion up until the moment of birth. More than 2,000 pro-lifers spoke out against the proposal last week during a special hearing in the State House. Still, the measure appears to have the votes to pass. Joining us now to talk about this and more is Father Aaron Damboise, pastor of Holy Savior in Rumford, Maine, and Gordon Davis, Life Program Director for the Holy Family Council of the Knights of Columbus in Lewiston, Maine. Thank you both for your time. We really appreciate it. Gordon, I want to start with you. We mentioned that this bill would legalize abortion up until birth. What's the current law on the books and why the change?
Right now it goes to 24 weeks, allows abortion up to 24 weeks, but this would allow abortion right to the point of birth.
Father Aaron, I want to bring you into this discussion. I know that you were at the State House when folks were giving testimony about this proposed legislation, and it grew that enormous crowd there, over 2,000 people. I know this type of thing really doesn't happen in Maine. I worked there for many years in local media, so I know that. Why do you think this particular bill brought out so many pro-lifers? And tell us about that day.
Well, first of all, it was a momentous day. It was just a fantastic spirit that existed in the State House. I don't think that the State House has seen that for a long time. And in fact, it reminded me of my days as a seminarian when we would go down to the March for Life in Washington, D.C. And so just everyone that was there was of one mind and one heart. You know, we wanted to protect life in the womb. What spurred on this, what brought on this reaction, though, I believe is directly related to a movement that was started by Representative Laurel Libby, who is a member of the House of the Representatives in Maine, and she began a movement called Speak Up for Life. And this movement, Speak Up for Life Maine, worked to mobilize people of goodwill who really had issues with legitimate issues with LD 1619, and of course, part of that was meant to gather us, and to galvanize us. But it was also a movement that was meant to teach people how to advocate to their legislators, and and how to make their points of view known in a way that would be helpful for people to hear them. But that movement and that coming together was actually, I think, the catalyst for that presence that was generated at the State House.
Yeah, it really incredible indeed. Gordon, I'm curious, what happens next with this bill? I mean, it does seem like it's going to pass.
We're all being encouraged.
Gordon or Father? Go ahead, Gordon.
Go ahead, Gordon.
We're all being encouraged to contact our legislators, and especially those who, the 7 Democrats who did not sign on to this bill. So we've been asked to encourage them to not vote in favor of the bill, but to vote against it. The bill still hasn't gone to the floor yet, so there's still some time to perhaps influence some of the votes.
That is really good to hear. Father Aaron, and what can the faithful do? What would you suggest?
Well, first of all, I think the faithful need to pray. We need to bring this. We need to continue to storm heaven with our prayers. Because life is precious. But secondly, I think the faithful need to arm themselves. They need to make sure that they are in touch with their representatives, that they're speaking out. And if they don't know how to do that, they should look for ways of educating themselves on how to speak out properly, including how to write a letter to the editor, how to speak to your senator or representative on the telephone, and when you do speak to them, what do you say? And of course, if the opportunity presents itself, show up at a legislative hearing, and even if you're not there to give testimony, listen and be of support, and I think that that's absolutely key. And I would say too that for those faithful who do not live in Maine, or who perhaps maybe do not live in a state where the right to life is being challenged at the legislative level, contact legislatures in Maine and in those other states, just to let them know how you feel, and to help them to recognize that there are people out there throughout the country who are watching what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And really want to make sure that life is protected at all ages and stages.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both so much for coming on and talking to us about this. We'll be praying for you all up there and for the state of Maine. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. And I was asked to by Dave Guthrow, who's our communications director, and apparently one of your former colleagues, to extend a very gracious hello and to let you know that he misses you.
Oh, I miss him too. God bless him, and God bless you both. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly, centuries in the making. We take a look at the Vatican Museums' latest project, plus the future of society. Pope Francis offers a possible solution for the declining birth rate in Italy. Pope Francis says the family remains the future of society.
Per far fiorire una nuova primavera e lasciarci alle spalle questo inverno demografico.
Well, the Holy Father was speaking at a conference in Rome on the declining birth rate in Italy. He also called for more legislation to encourage young people to start a family. Other speakers at the conference included Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. Italy's birth rate hit a record low in 2022. A top cardinal is defending the Holy Father's decision to fire the elected leaders at Caritas late last year. Cardinal Michael Czerny claimed that appointing a temporary administrator was an act of love and care to revitalize the organization. Caritas is one of the largest aid services in the world and had faced scrutiny last year for a toxic work environment under previous leadership. Finally tonight, the Vatican Museums have unveiled a new exhibit of artifacts dedicated to a figure from ancient Egypt. The Charm of Sekhmet is the continuation of a project that began in 2017. It studied statues of the ancient goddess Sekhmet, or lioness, that were given to the Vatican Museums in the 1800s. The Vatican exhibition features around 24 sculptures. They're believed to be thousands of years old, dating back to several centuries before Christ. Joining us now from Rome is Alessia Amenta, Curator of the Vatican Museums Department of Egyptian and Near Eastern Antiquities. Alessia, thank you so much for your time today. Tell us a little bit more about this project and why these statues are so important.
Yes, this is a very important project, an interdisciplinary and international project who is focusing on a sculptural production, a huge sculptural production of hundreds of statues of the goddess Sekhmet. And they are coming from a funerary temple in West Thebes. It means the west bank of modern Luxor, from the funerary temple of Amenophis III, 18th dynasty, and it means 14th century before Christ. And it is the most important funerary temple in that area, very huge, 700 meters per 500 meters. And from this temple are coming 800 of these Sekhmet statues.
And curious, how did the Vatican's museums first obtain these sculptures?
They came into the Vatican Museum in 1819, thanks to a traveler and archaeologist of that time, whose name is Silvestro Guidi, and who was collecting statues to be acquired from the Pope in Rome after coming back to Italy. And these statues were coming from the ground of this funerary temple, and they are 18 statues, very beautiful, and they are complete in granodiorite, so very polished and black.
Very interesting. What do you hope people learn from this new exhibit?
It's the hugest sculptural production in the history of a human race. So this is really extraordinary. We are cooperating also with a machine learning engineer for the artificial intelligence, because we are applying this machine learning to our huge amount of data. You have to imagine that we were measuring each statues, and we have more or less 70 measurements for each statues. Imagine that we have 800 statues, how many data we have to collect. Because even if it is a huge production with a single theme, I mean, this is the goddess Sekhmet, each statue is different from the other. And this is very incredible.
Alessia, thank you so much for your time today. This was fascinating. Alessia Amenta, Curator of the Vatican Museums Department of Egyptian and Near Eastern Antiquities. Thank you so much.
Thank you to you. Bye-bye.
And we thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sable. Good night, and God bless.